Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A bill aimed at eliminating existing discriminations in the Indian Act continues to wind its way through the Senate. Bill S2 is currently being reviewed by the Senate Standing Committee on Indigenous Peoples. It seeks to end sex and enfranchisement-based discriminations that continue to exist in the Indian Act. But on Tuesday morning, the committee heard from witnesses that said S2 is flawed in its current form. Cora Maguire-Surrett is the CEO of the Ontario Native Women's Association. She said the bill needs to do away with both the second-generation cutoff and 1985 cutoffs once and for all.
Remove the second-generation cutoff by returning to a one-parent rule for transmission of status. By denying status to generations of First Nations women and their children, the second-generation cutoff has deprived women access to participate in band governance, services, and opportunities. Continuing the second-generation cutoff will result in the numbers of registered Indians declining over time, eventually leading to the extinction of status Indians in entire communities.
The federal justice minister was in Manitoba today to share more information on the recently introduced Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. He says the legislation will bring harsher penalties to those who assault first responders on the job. Sav Jonesa has more.
The federal justice minister, Sean Fraser, says recently tabled Bill C-14 includes more than 80 concrete measures to do two things.
One, to make it harder for violent repeat offenders to be granted bail. And two, to impose harsher penalties on those who commit some of the most serious violent crimes.
Among many amendments, the proposed bail and sentencing reform legislation will address the growing violence against first responders across the country through changes to the criminal code. Fraser says crimes against paramedics, firefighters, and emergency workers will be treated more seriously at sentencing.
If we're going to count on people to keep our community safe, the very least we can do is to ensure that the law returns the favor. People who are subjected to assaults when they're trying to save lives, when they're trying to fight fires, do not deserve to be seeing people who may assault them treated with impunity by the criminal justice system.
Kyle Ross is the president of MGEU, the union representing Winnipeg paramedics. A recent survey by MGEU found that just under 25% of Winnipeg paramedics say they face violence on the job every day. Ross points out that though harsher penalties for crimes against first responders may help, it ultimately requires a worker to get assaulted before there can be action.
Right now we have workers off the job. We have many injured paramedics right now, which is causing them to be short-staffed. And if we can find ways to keep them on the job, that'll help Winnipeggers. And right now our workers, they're being injured all the time.
He says there needs to be more investment in preventing the violence, but exactly how is a big question for this societal issue. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
To Regina now, where the Board of Police Commissioners has announced the termination of Farouk Sheikh, the city's chief of police. The decision follows an investigation by the Saskatchewan Public Complaints Commission. The commission investigates complaints against law enforcement agencies. After reviewing two against Sheikh, the commission found that one claim that he used his position to influence a member of the police board was unsubstantiated. However, a second claim of discreditable conduct was substantiated. The commission found he engaged in inappropriate private communication with the complainant about sensitive topics, including his contract, and failed to take responsibility for his actions. That was enough for the Regina Board of Police Commissioners. They terminated Sheikh with cause, saying the decision was necessary to uphold the integrity of police leadership. The Yukon will be heading into a territorial election next week. While political parties have been busy publicizing their campaigns, First Nations, community organizations, and school boards also have priorities they want the next government to take into account. Our Yukon reporter Sarah Connors caught up with them to see what issues are on their radar.
In the Yukon, election season is in full swing, and it's the final week before voters head to the polls. As political parties near the end of their campaigns, First Nations, community organizations, and the Yukon First Nation School Board are also laying out their priorities.
I just really feel that this is going to be a very critical election in moving forward.
For Chief Donna Hope of the First Nation of Nacho-Nayakdun, mining is top of mind. A heap leach failure at the Eagle Gold Mine last year caused hundreds of millions of liters of cyanide-contaminated water to escape into the surrounding environment on the First Nations traditional territory. Nacho-Nayakdun has been vocal in its call for a public inquiry into the mining disaster, arguing it showed serious failures in oversight and regulation and wants the next government to fully commit to one.
We do have a huge history of mining, and I think that we can do a lot better, especially in today's standards.
Housing and homelessness is a major concern for housing nonprofit The Safe at Home Society. The latest point-in-time count found at least 145 people were experiencing homelessness in Whitehorse, 83% identified as Indigenous. The Society hopes to see strong investments in supportive housing, something it says will help alleviate pressure on things like shelters, healthcare, and the justice system.
The Yukon prides itself on taking care of each other and being a caring, giving community, and that needs to extend to words and also how we vote.
The First Nation School Board is using the election to springboard its call for a better funding formula with the Department of Education. It says its current funding agreement with the department isn't transparent, fair, or sufficient enough to fund operations, forcing it to seek loans and draw from reserves. The board's chair says it wants predictable, timely, and equitable funding so First Nation students can thrive.
We are looking for a premier and a minister of education that is committed to work with us in a genuine and transparent way.
These community leaders say regardless of what party is elected, only time will tell if they'll take real action on the issues that matter most to them. The territorial election will take place on November 3rd. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Meanwhile, voting is over in Nunavut. Almost all of the polls have reported in, and it looks like there's going to be a lot of new faces in the Legislative Assembly. The election saw a roughly 37% voter turnout. There was a fairly even split between new MLAs and veteran incumbents. Voters had several issues they want addressed by the new government, like affordability, homelessness, mental health, education, and immigration. At least 3 ridings will see a judicial recount because their races were too close to call. Once the new and returning MLAs are confirmed, they will elect a premier, cabinet, and House Speaker at the first sitting of the new legislative session, scheduled for November 20th. Before we head to break, our Yellowknife video journalist Bruce Dela Cruz gives us a glimpse at what he's working on this week.
Hi there. Housing NWT, the governing body for housing in the Northwest Territories, has released its 2024 to 2025 annual report. Stay tuned as I break down key developments, including updates on public housing, home ownership programs, and homelessness programs. Catch this story only on APTN National News.
Welcome back. Sergeant Tommy Prince was the most decorated First Nations veteran of World War II and the Korean War. He was a member of the famous Devil's Brigade, and while he did a lot to protect this country, it didn't protect him when he came back from war. He faced a lot of racism and discrimination, and as T.R. Wheatley shows us now, people are celebrating his life just days before the military acknowledges the past.
Sergeant Tommy Prince of Broken Head Ojibwe Nation, who received numerous awards for his bravery in World War II and the Korean War.
People packed a small community hall in Petersfield, Manitoba on this cool October 25th. It would have been Prince's 110th birthday. Sergeant Tommy Prince Sr. was born here in 1915, and for the first time, Petersfield has come together, along with his family and First Nation, to have a ceremonial celebration. The Anishinaabe man died in 1977 while living on the streets in Winnipeg. He's buried in the city's Field of Heroes. His son, Tommy Prince Jr., says it would have been a special day for his dad if he was still around, as no one really celebrated his birthday.
My father would have been happy, would have been dancing, and just happy with everybody.
Junior is one of 6 siblings. All of them were split up as children and taken during the 60s scoop. Karen Braun Prince is the youngest.
Fortunately, my older brother and sister were able to meet him later on in his life before he passed, and I never got that opportunity. So I'm a little bit sad about that, but I read so many wonderful things about him. You know, Google is great.
Prince was one of 3 Canadians to get both the Canadian Military Medal and the American Silver Star. He earned 11 medals in total from both World War II and the Korean War. This celebration of life and achievement is also an acknowledgement of sacrifice, not just overseas, but also what Prince and many other Indigenous soldiers faced while here at home.
It is happening just days before the Canadian Armed Forces is giving an official apology to those who have served, who have faced racism and discrimination while in the military.
Broken Head Chief Gordon Blue Sky is a relative of Prince.
I think Sergeant Tommy Prince is a big example of that racism, you know.
Like Prince's kids, Blue Sky was scooped too and ended up in the U.S., where he joined the Navy from 1992 through 1998. He's felt the racism firsthand, but says others before him, especially Prince, had it harder.
Any command he was a part of, he was always second in command, because he could never be first in command, just because of his race. And so I think that has rippling effects even till today. Even back then, he died in the streets, not being acknowledged to the extent that he should have been. His family had to work tirelessly to get not only his name restored.
I'm still fighting for some recognition that he deserves.
Now Junior is looking to get his father's rank changed from sergeant to lieutenant senior grade, and he's looking to Manitoba's premier for help.
I wrote a letter to our premier, Rob New, asking for assistance from the family. 3 times he was given a promotion and he never received it. I have letters here.
Canoe acknowledged the letter at an unrelated event, but makes it clear it's a federal fight.
The military is very protocol driven, and it is entirely within the purview of the federal government. So at the same time that I want to support the Prince family, I also don't want to maybe step on any toes that's going to make it counterproductive towards that goal. But yeah, we'll definitely help them.
Help the Prince family welcomes as they fight for a father who fought for us all. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, TR. 9 years after the first Pacific Northwest LNG terminal was cancelled, the Premier of British Columbia has greenlit a new project spearheaded by the Nisga'a Nation. But 2 other First Nations are going to court to try and stop the project. We get more on this from Ryan Cunningham in Vancouver.
The original pipeline in 2014 under TC Energy Corp, a Calgary-based energy company, was to supply gas to the now cancelled Pacific Northwest LNG terminal. When regulatory and environmental reviews delayed the project, Malaysia's energy giant Petronas sold its majority stake to the Nisga'a Nation. The Nisga'a-owned C. Lissam's LNG project are working with Rockies LNG Limited and Western LNG out of Houston, Texas. They are proposing 2 floating facilities that would export 12 million tons of liquid natural gas annually to Asia-Pacific markets. In September, BC Premier David Eby announced the project was greenlit, saying the Indigenous-owned project led by the Nisga'a Nation is a treaty nation that has control over their jurisdiction. And Federal Energy Minister Tim Hodgson also praised the decision as an example of the one project, one review system which relied on the province's assessment. The fast-tracking of the Sea Lissams project has mounting opposition from Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups. The Lax Kw'alaams Band and the Metlakatla First Nation have outstanding Aboriginal title claims in the BC Supreme Court for the Mylor Peninsula, where a transmission line is required to power the facility. They claim this project could threaten their Aboriginal rights and title in perpetuity. However, the Metlakatla First Nation argues that assessment relied on speculative economic concepts to justify the project, and allege the Minister of Environment and Climate Change ignored the project's adverse impacts. Environmental activists have expressed concerns over increased tanker traffic, and the Gittin-Yao hereditary chiefs say the terminals would be devastating to the environment, including critical salmon habitat. Meanwhile, the government and Sea Lissams project team have not yet responded to any claims in court. Ryan Cunningham, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Thanks, Ryan. Emery Burning Grass has caught fire online, and now an effort is underway to get the puppet a television deal. That story and more coming up. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And this one from Michelle D shared this incredible view of a sunrise over the neighborhood of Porcupine, Ontario, which is just east of Timmins. Thanks for the great shot. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, send those pictures to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, cloudy and 10 for Fredericton, cloudy and 11 for Halifax. Sunny and 8 for Kuujjuaq and Nain. 7 in Montreal, 2 in Val-d'Or. 11 for Sault Ste. Marie, 10 in Ottawa. 8 for Thunder Bay, 7 in Sioux Lookout. 5 for God's Lake, 4 in Norway House. 7 for Winnipeg, 10 in Dauphin. 7 in Regina and Saskatoon, 8 in North Battleford. 7 for Meadow Lake, 5 in La Ronge. In Northern Alberta, showers and +1 for high level, 2 in Fort Chipewyan. 8 for Edmonton, sunny and 12 for Lethbridge. 12 in Vancouver, Victoria, and Kamloops. 9 in Prince George, 7 for Smithers. -13 in Old Crow, 0 for Whitehorse. +1 with snow for Yellowknife, -2 in Norman Wells. 6 below for Saxe Harbor and Polituck. 2 with snow in Chesterfield, -2 and flurries for Baker Lake. -8 in Resolute, 0 in Iqaluit. A Cree puppet has been a big hit on social media, and a few humans are now working on a TV pilot in hopes of creating a full-fledged series. As APTN's Chris Stewart tells us, where there's smoke, there's Emery burning grass.
I just want my clothes. Stugga, what's going on here? Emery, what are you doing here? Why are you wearing my stuff? What stuff?
Emery Burning Grass's social media short stories have had millions of views. He smokes, drinks, gambles, is a womanizer, and trouble seems to find him. But he has a heart of gold. It's a comedy with deep Indigenous roots. And he is a creation of Donald McDonald. Donald overcame a youth filled with drug addictions and prison time. 6 or 7 years ago, a visit to a thrift store changed his life.
I walked into a Value Village thrift store and I seen Emery burning grass there. He was a white cop when I picked him up, and I took him back to the reserve, and I threw some braids, some tattoos, some hickeys on this puppet, gave him a medallion, and from there somebody pressed record one day and Emery hit social media.
Donald says it's important that Emery speaks Cree.
So today I'm going to teach you guys a word. It is Sagituwin. Sagituwin. It means love. So a lot of the videos that I put out, I add a little bit of Cree into it, just to try and keep the language alive, I guess. And it's been a good journey. It's better than being incarcerated behind bars. I'm actually out there being a role model to the next generation.
And with millions of views and fans, he brings his comedy show across the country.
Very grateful for the little bugger, he's my sugar daddy. He's taken me across Canada a few times, over and over.
And he has teamed up with actress, producer, director Regina of Blackstone, Older Than America, and Tribal fame. They are currently filming a 30-minute pilot for a full series of the adventures of Emery Burning Grass.
Somebody turned me on to Emery, and I just went down this rabbit hole checking him out. And I was so fascinated. Like, grown men were texting him and sending messages like, "Oh, leave her, she's not good for you," and like talking to him like he's a grown man, and it was hilarious.
They are looking for a distributor to pick up the series. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Enoch, Cree Nation, Alberta.
Sagituwin. Good luck, Donald. After years of struggling with addictions, musician Francis Baptiste is extremely proud of where he's at today, and with the new album he released just last week. Tonight on an all-new episode of Face to Face, right after the news, Baptiste says one of the goals of the new album, Lived Experience in East Vancouver, is to break down the stigma around addiction.
I work in the downtown east side. I'm surrounded by people who are in various degrees of recovery all the time. And as I mentioned before, I've struggled with addiction my whole life. And one of the things that kind of makes it harder is the lack of empathy that a lot of addicts face. There's all these kind of preconceptions that if you're an addict, if you're addicted to drugs or alcohol, that you're just a lazier person, or you're just a weaker-willed individual, that like you don't have that fight in you. But a lot of the struggle that us addicts face it's beneath the surface. It's like an invisible struggle that you have every day.
And you can catch that episode of Face to Face in roughly 2 minutes from now. The Toronto Blue Jays and the Los Angeles Dodgers will play Game 4 of the World Series tonight, less than 24 hours after a record-setting 18-inning Game 3.
I love the way we played. I love the way we fought. I think every single player had the right intentions on both sides tonight.
There's still plenty of baseball left to be played in this 7-game series. The Dodgers have a 2-1 series lead with Game 4 set for tonight in Los Angeles. Shohei Ohtani gets the start on the mound for the Dodgers, while Shane Bieber gets the ball for Toronto. And I feel like I can speak for most of us who are hoping that tonight's game ends at least 3 hours earlier than last night's. I've not watched this much baseball since 1993. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For more and news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Creason will be here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time with your first look at the day's news, and hopefully that ball game isn't still ongoing. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Stick around. Face to Face is up next. Have a great night.